This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our Thursday edition. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, legendary Boxing Hall of Fame writer Jack Hirsch, as we're live on Roku, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and a bunch of other places we'll be live later on today, folks. Today on the show, we have scheduled on Carter B coming up around 8:30 with our hockey playoff update. So, I just got dinged. Hopefully that's not him canceling. So we'll see what happens as far as if Carter makes it in today or not. But either way, we'll cover the NHL playoffs. So, Jack, a lot of things to catch up on. This is our first day back. But I want to start off with the NBA playoffs. The Warriors take a 1-0 lead, beating the Mavericks 112-87. Now, this wasn't really a game of the stars, right? Steph Curry had 21 points. Luka chips in 20 for the Mavericks. But it was really about the teams. The Warriors had like 7 players in double digits, all playing really well, shooting well, defending well. And they, by a large amount, beat out the Mavericks role players, bench players, and the rest of their team. So a real good win for the Warriors. We'll see if the Mavericks can climb back in it, Jack.
You wonder whether Dallas suffered a little bit of a letdown after that emotional, come from behind victory over Phoenix, and the way they especially blew Phoenix out in the final game, whether there was this big level of satisfaction, because very few people gave the Mavs a chance in that series against Phoenix, and they got it done. And now they're going in against Golden State. So a lot of times the team is going to have a letdown in that game one. And that appeared to be the case with Dallas. Golden State really seemed prime, ready to play. Everyone got involved. The ball was moving all over the place. Great win for Golden State. Decisive win. It's not expected to be that easy the rest of the series. But the consensus is that Golden State's the better team. But didn't we think that about Phoenix and Dallas as well? And so, look what happened.
Yeah, in fact, our co-host, Jim Jeffco, predicted that the Mavericks would beat Phoenix.
He lives in Dallas. It doesn't count. Of course, Jeffco's always going to pick a Dallas team. Didn't he pick the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl last year?
No.
Well, didn't Jeffcoat say they would go 15-2 or something on the season? Or he's always saying that.
No, he didn't say that either. He's pretty much a realist. The thing is that, I did post that and got a lot of play on Facebook, tell him he's a great predictor and everything. But, this is going to – he really hasn't predicted Dallas to beat the Warriors. He's a little bit edgy here, Jack. He's kind of saying they could beat the Warriors. Well, yeah, anybody could beat anybody. I mean, that's not really a prediction, right? So he's kind of reserved when it comes to the Mavericks and the Warriors. And don't forget, in the beginning of the playoffs, I picked the Warriors to represent the West in the championship versus the Bucks. Now, my Bucks fell off, as we know. But the Warriors are still alive, so my prediction in the West is still valid.
I don't remember you predicting that one way or the other.
Of course you don't.
I don't even remember you talking about that.
Of course you
don't.
You
have 1-0 in the Western Conference Final. You're coming out.
Well, I don't think you want to remember, Jack, when I said I think the Warriors could beat the Suns in the Western Conference Finals, and they probably would. Now, I was wrong with the Suns. but the Warriors prediction is still on the table. So let's talk a little bit about the Celtics versus Miami tonight. Miami, of course, beat the Celtics. Again, Butler had 41 points, but the Miami team just outplayed the Celtics team, period. I mean, they were hitting their shots, good defense. Celtics looked a little bit tired. They didn't have two players. Tonight, Smart plays for the Celtics, Jack. A good defender. They'll probably put him on Butler a lot. Does this give the Celtics an even playing field tonight?
Oh, absolutely. I think the Celtics come ready to play tonight, and Smart will be on Butler. And the Celtics will use some different formations. We were talking about the emotions a little while ago with Dallas coming from behind to beat Phoenix in that series. You know, you win an emotional series like that. Sometimes you don't show up for game one in the next round. You're kind of just drained. You're hoping you can play well, but you're not really psyched. And that would have appeared to be the case also. The Celtics were playing the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, that was a big, big series. Think of all the emotions and the mental energy that went into that series. And when the Celtics were down 3-2, losing game 5 at home to the Bucks, and then have to come from behind, win game 6 in Milwaukee, then game 7 at home. You know, to go into Miami and be all sky high, you know, you do suffer a letdown, and that's what happened in game 1. The Celtics just weren't ready. They'll be ready in game 2. I think they're going to come up with a strong effort. I look for a long series here. Any thoughts of Miami winning in 4 or 5 games? You know, forget about it. If Miami is to win this thing, you know, it would be at least 6-7 games. But I think the Celtics have a good chance to come back. And I think they will come back and ultimately win this series.
Well, let's push forward in this thing. Okay, whether, you know, Warriors win or Dallas wins or the Celtics or Miami wins, it seems to me, now I could be wrong, but this is me watching the games, that the East has stronger defenses than the West overall. That they're Miami and the Celtics are probably two of the better defending teams. The Bucks were 1-2 in basketball, period. Where the Warriors, they do have a decent defense with Green and others, and the Mavericks not so much. Do you think that even in basketball, Jack, the best defensive team wins?
Yeah, you could make that point. I think the team with the most firepower ultimately takes control, because no matter how good the defenses are, if you're guarding super players, they're going to break through sooner or later. You could contain them, but to a point, but you can't really stop them. It's just a question of damage control. I know you could have these great defensive players all over the court, you know, doing certain things like Memphis did. They were really good underneath, okay? Underneath the basket, played great defense this year, played great in the absence of Jay Morant. But eventually, superior firepower overcomes everything.
I don't know if I totally agree with you there, because if that was true, the Nets would still be in the playoffs, the championship hunt right now.
Well, the Nets didn't have. The Nets were in a well-balanced team. They were basically a 2-player team. And to your point, you are correct. One of the players, Kyrie Irving, wasn't exactly the best defender. Didn't completely commit to defense. I understand what you're saying, but then again, you look at a team like Milwaukee, a player like Giannis has a lot to do with the success for them to break through. Even though they lost to the Celtics had great firepower, you know, with Tatum and Brown. So, you know, it depends on the scenario. Dallas with Luka broke through eventually against Phoenix. But then again, defenses tend to break down. I mean, how many players do you have who you could call basically defensive specialists who, you know, devote the majority of their game to defense? And those players you're going to find are usually the ones that come off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to a point. But if you look at the great players in the NBA history, Michael Jordan, excellent defender. Kobe Bryant, excellent defender.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the guys that rise to the top over even the great players, right? You're talking about guys that really take pride in their defense. They're not, of course, they're not the Worm. They're not Dennis Rodman, and they're not maybe, maybe you could throw in, Celtics great center too. That they play, and even Larry Bird, Jack, rebounding machine, played the defense very well.
Larry Bird wasn't a great defensive player. Don't start putting him
But
in
a great rebounder.
Yeah,
A great rebounder,
Yeah.
Jack. I mean, he got under the basket.
It's a good rebound. I mean, he played hard on defense. You could say
Right.
he was average defender on balance. Not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah.
But
As
committed
opposed
to defense on his end. Absolutely.
as opposed to maybe Dr. J, who was just an offensive juggernaut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Well, Dr. J was basically a lazy defensive player. That's what the problem was. He would go through the motions. When you play defense, you have to be on the ball handler or the guy you're guarding while he's moving around at all times. You can't just have little spurts when he has the ball all of a sudden to commit for like a couple of seconds and hold your hands up. You have to be on him the whole time.
Which the Warriors did against Luka the whole game, and the Miami Heat did against, even though they got some of their points, Jaylen Brown, who was having a lot of problems shooting the ball. So, I mean, this, I think that, that's where I give the Warriors the best chance to beat the Mavericks is their defense. And
right now, if we had to project the team most likely to win the NBA title, Golden State would have to be favored at this moment.
I don't know about that. I think Miami or the Celtics could handle the Warriors, but we'll see what happens. So since we got a little time, we'll talk a little NFL here before Carter comes in. Bradbury signs with the Eagles a 1-year contract for $10 million after the Giants released him. Now, Bradbury's a former All-Pro. He's a very good cornerback. He's playing opposite now.
Very good cornerback. The Giants wouldn't be getting rid of him. They're not in a position to get rid of very good players.
Yes, they are. They had to, Jack. They had no choice. $13 million they couldn't afford under the salary cap. So they had to get rid of Bradbury. Very simple. Bradbury wasn't going to renegotiate.
They could have re-signed him.
He wasn't going to renegotiate, Jack. That's why he got $10 million going to Philly. So the point being, the Giants had to move. They tried to trade him. They couldn't get a trade for him, so they ended up cutting him to save. I think it was $10 million under the cap so they could start signing some of their rookies. So he's playing opposite, or I should say with Darius Slayton down there in Philadelphia, another very good cornerback. And the Eagles' defense is starting to shape up now too, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles had a heck of a good draft, made a number of deals. And to me, the Eagles are the favorites to win the NFC East now, which is astonishing if you look where they were last year at this time. Last year at this time, we thought, at least I thought, they had one of the worst teams in football. Yeah. I was projecting them to win 3-4 games on the whole season, maybe have a record of 4-13. Yet they went 9-8, nabbed the playoff position, and they've improved from there. And I think Dallas, if anything, is regressing just a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think the Eagles are actually the favorites to win that division. And Jalen Hurts is going to be under the microscope, obviously, at quarterback, because they've improved the team around him, and he's got to keep up with that from his end. So it's going to be an interesting year in Philadelphia. But I'll tell you, Philadelphia has high expectations for the Eagles, unlike last year, where the Eagles were given a pass, where all Eagle fans were ecstatic to go 9-8 and nab a playoff position. They're not going to be ecstatic to just, go something like 10-7 and get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. That wouldn't quite be good enough for them this year. They've got to make a much deeper playoff run this year. So it's an exciting time with the Eagles. Kudos to them. the way they've turned that organization around, the GM, Howie Roseman, in a short amount of time.
Do you think the expectations are going to weigh heavy on the Eagles this year, Jack? As you just said, last year, I was with you. I thought the Eagles would finish in last year in the NFC East, and they jump up and surprise everybody except for Pags. So, I mean, now they're considered one of the favorites. Does this put too much pressure on that young quarterback and too much pressure on the Eagles to come up and either, win the division or at least have a better record than last year?
I don't want to use the word too much pressure, but pressure's definitely there more than last year. The worst thing a franchise could do sometimes, Mac, believe it or not, is to improve too fast, too soon. That's the worst thing. I mean, you take a team who I have high hopes for, like the Detroit Lions, for example. I think the Lions are capable of going 10-7, 11-6 next year, contending with the Packers for that division title. But the Lions were 13-1 last year, I believe, or something like that. Let's say the Lions go to 7-10 next year. The Lion fan base will accept that because they'll see the team improve by 3 games or so. So they'll be satisfied. And then if the year after that, the Lions go 9-8, the fan base will still be happy because they're improving. But let's say the Lions do what I said. Let's say they go 11-6 next year. Then the following year, 9-8 wouldn't be acceptable. Okay, because it's too much of an improvement too soon. I mean, listen, the Jets and Giants have the novelty here. They don't have to make the playoffs. If either team goes 8-9, their fan base will say, oh, we've improved. We're getting to where we want to get. But let's say they do make the playoffs and take a sudden leap. Once you take that leap, you're stuck, Mac. Anything less than that the following year is considered failure, jobs in jeopardy, and you'll have a very unhappy fan base that has to be answered to.
Well, first of all, I don't know what you were smoking in Miami, but there's no way Detroit's going to have a winning record this year. That's just not going to happen. I don't see their team improving that much, Jack. They had a hardworking team last year. They haven't done anything really but draft to make their team that much better and to improve to.
Well, they drafted. They got Hutchinson.
I said their draft.
That great edge rusher from Michigan, who's going to be a force for them next year.
Not 11 wins worth.
Extra attitude.
Not 11 wins worth.
Then you got great Alabama wide receiver who would have been maybe a top 3 pick in the draft had he not gotten injured during the year, had the ACL injury. But he's going to be coming back at about mid-season or so, and he's electric, He's going to be a great receiver for them. And they lost a lot of close games last year, which odds are they're going to turn the corner and win most of those close games.
Hey, we said the same thing about Minnesota too, Jack. We said the same thing about Seattle at one time.
Well, I don't think
a loss.
Who said it about Seattle? There you go, Mac.
A loss.
Just saying you picked the Warriors to go to the finals.
A loss.
Where did we say that about Seattle?
Well, remember when Seattle had, not last year, but the year before, when they had a problem winning games more than they did recently, they lost a lot of close games. Last year, Minnesota, could be the year before, lost a lot of 2-point games, Jack. So we said, oh, well, they're getting better. They're playing tough. They're playing hard. And look what happened to them last year.
No, they kept losing the close games.
A loss is a loss, Jack. I don't care if you lose by 1 point every game. You still lost until you learn how to win. And it takes a little while to do that. And a good with winning, that's when you become a good team. You don't go from 3-13 to 11-6 because you lost a lot of close games and picked up a couple drafts, one that won't be playing half the year. That's not going to improve them. So I don't
Well,
know.
well, listen. We could debate that back and forth, but the example I just gave, I could have given a better example, a much better example than I did. I could have used the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mhm.
Last year, all the Bengals had to do was make the playoffs and
Right.
get eliminated in the first round. The Bengals just had to go 9-8, not even make the playoffs, just get a winning record, and people in Cincinnati would have been happy. But they went to the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
That means this season, anything short of the Super Bowl will be disappointing. But had they not gone to the Super Bowl and only went 9-8, and then this season just made the playoffs, even if they lost the first game of the playoffs, their fan base would have been satisfied that they improved and finally made the playoffs a couple of years later. But since they went to the Super Bowl, anything less is considered disappointing.
Well, a lot of things broke right for Cincinnati to go to the Super Bowl, too. I mean, it wasn't like they destroyed every team getting there. They do have a little bit better quarterback than Detroit has, and they do have a
A
little bit
lot better.
and they do have a little bit
Joe
of better.
Burrow better than Jared Goff. I mean, come on.
And then the
Jared Goff
receiving
is capable, Matt.
and
Take it to the Super
on a
Bowl with the
really
Rams.
on a really good team, Jack. He's very capable.
Yeah.
The Detroit Lions aren't a really good team, Jack. And their receiver over there is a little bit better than that receiver they drafted that's going to be out for half a year. So we'll see what happens. I would be happy if I was a Lions fan if they just had 6 or 7 wins this year, Jack. That would, and they improved, as you said.
Thank you for making my point. If the Lions go 7-10, that means they improved.
Yeah, but that's not what you're saying.
By about 3 games. So their fan base won't be unhappy. They'll see, hey, at least we're improving. You're not going to be thrilled with 7-10, but they're not going to be exasperated.
But that's not what you're saying, Jack. You're saying the Lions will go 10-7.
I'm thinking they're going to take the leap up, the Lions, this year.
A
big leap up. Listen, their coach, Dan Campbell, he came in all animated last year. He was talking about breaking kneecaps of opposing players. He was crying at a press conference when they lost the game. How often have you seen coaches cry, Mac? Because they kept losing heartbreaker after heartbreaker. And this team is I'm telling you, they're like trending to turn it around. I don't know, is Jared Goff their quarterback of the future, Mac? I can't say that. Maybe he is. Jared Goff, you know who he reminds me of? Let me throw this at you. A Ryan Tannehill type, right?
I agree.
Ryan Tannehill is good enough to quarterback a team to the Super Bowl. He's good enough as a game manager, but he's not an elite quarterback. But he's
maybe win a Super Bowl, depending if everything.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah,
just like Jimmy G, he's good enough to get you there.
Right, you get certain quarterbacks that are in certain categories. Tannehill, Jimmy G, maybe Jared Goff is in that category.
Right.
Not sure yet.
I think he is.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the ideal situation is to get the quarterback who's the difference maker. But how many difference makers do we have? We have Mahomes, Rodgers, but Rodgers hasn't been a difference maker in the playoffs, all through the playoffs. He'll play a great playoff game, then kind of be flat the next week for whatever reason. Is Dak Prescott a difference maker? I think more so than not, but he's still got to prove it. Out there.
I think you could put Dak Prescott in that. He's good enough to get you to a Super Bowl and maybe win it. I don't think. See, to me, Jack, when you talk about players like that, we forget the whole of the rest of the team, right? We always, even with the superstar quarterbacks, we forget about Kansas City's defense playing well, getting to the Super Bowl. We talk about Tom Brady going to the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, but we don't talk about the real reason Tampa Bay won that Super Bowl, which was the defense and the running game.
But so it's a team effort. Listen.
Right. So this is what I'm saying, Jack. I think those quarterbacks, if you put them side by side, all the quarterbacks we just talked about. There's different groupings. There's no doubt because there's different types of leaders too. So I think that when you're talking about Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady, maybe Wilson, maybe Joe Burrow now, Josh Allen, maybe we'll see. I mean,
Now, Josh Allen's elite. You get about 10 quarterbacks, Mac, who are difference makers without question.
Right.
Who have a major impact on their team. They don't just manage the game, they make things happen. Josh Allen definitely is one of them. Brady's one of them. Rodgers is one of them. I think Dak Prescott actually is kind of more so one of them than not. He's still got to prove it a little more, but I kind of feel you could count on him as being a difference maker. He better be it for the Cowboys, because if he is a game manager for the Cowboys, they're going to have problems.
Well, Dak Prescott reminds me a lot of Kirk Cousins, except he's a better athlete, all right?
I think he's better than Kirk Cousins.
He's a better athlete, but if you look at his stats, they're very similar. I mean, the stats that Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott, because a lot of people love looking at stats. And to me, stats are secondary to leadership and to playmaking and to things that happen. I don't care if a quarterback throws, Jack, I swear to God, for 50% the whole year. But when he gets into the big game, he does the job and wins the game. I think stats are so overrated in a lot of things. You put Dak's stats against people, he's a little bit up there. But you got to win the game. You can't lose the game, Jack. You can't be
No. Dak Prescott was hurt. Yeah.
You can't be put in a spot where you got to make that throw and don't make the throw. You can't be put in that spot where you try to force something in and throw an interception because you're trying too hard. The team has to work as one when you get into the big games. Even with Cincinnati, the reason why Cincinnati lost was because they went up against a better team. And that's what happens. I mean, I don't care who's playing at what point, what their stats are, their interceptions to touchdowns. It matters most when you get at the end of the season, because in the end, Jack, it's all about winning the Super Bowl or at least finishing up there to where you're competing for a Super Bowl. So I don't care if Tannehill leads the league in passing. I don't care if Derek Carr leads the league in passing. I don't care who leads the league in passing, who the MVP is. When it comes down to it at the end of the year, when your team has its maybe one and only shot of winning the game, that's when it matters. And if you can do it then, more power to you.
Mac, this is the point where the guy's a difference maker or not. If I name you a quarterback and say he has to be a quarterback for the next 5 years, assuming he's young enough, I'm not going to tell you Tom Brady the next 5 years, absolutely not. But assuming Brady was young enough, obviously you want him the next 10 years or whatever. You want Aaron Rodgers the next 10 years. You want Patrick Mahomes the next 10 years. You want Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. You want them you'll be happy with them the next 10 years, ecstatic. Assuming they're healthy. You'd want Dak Prescott in there the next 10 years too. I think you're not as sold on him as the others, but you'll settle for him. You'll think, okay, I think he'll get it done. But now if I start saying Jalen Hurts, okay, someone like that.
Yeah, don't know.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're going to start hesitating and say, well, I'm not so sure that I want him over there. Zach Wilson, you're not sure about at this point, kind of nervous. But some guys, are the goods. Ryan Tannehill, you're kind of a little nervous. You don't want to say, I want him the next 10 years. That's what I mean about the difference makers.
Yeah,
impact. Prescott's not as good as the other big name quarterbacks I mentioned, but he's on the lowest spectrum of them where you would accept him. Okay, he barely makes the cut. Deshaun, you would want him as far as an impact quarterback.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question then. Suppose right now you had a chance of having Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow. Who you taking?
Oh, Joe Burrow's easy.
That's
assuming he stays healthy. Yeah,
that's all I'm saying. And not so much that Joe Burrow's, not only is he accurate and a great young quarterback, as you saw, he did not hurt his team. He's mature enough in the big situation. You have to beat the Cincinnati Bengals to win. The whole team. Joe Burrows is not going to put you in a position where you're going to lose the game. No
Well,
matter
Zach Prescott doesn't either.
Jack, he does. He doesn't make the throw, and sometimes he tries to force it in and makes bad decisions. And we know just on that one of the last plays, instead of running down and downing the ball quickly, he took a snap. That might have lost the game for him. That's what I'm talking about. And then you saw Kirk Cousins change the ball and hold up the game. Now, I mean, these are little things that quarterbacks, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is better than Dak Prescott, but that move showed me that not only is he thinking about what he's doing, but he's thinking about the whole game as it's unraveling. And to me, that's what Burrows does. That's what Brady does. That's what Rodgers does. That's what Wilson does. That's what, Herbert's learning to do. These quarterbacks look at the whole game, not just at their performance. I guarantee you, Jack, if Aaron Rodgers' running game is working, he's going to keep handing the ball off. He's not going to try to throw the ball. These are quarterbacks.
But any quarterback, if the running game is working well, they're going to keep running the ball. They might
not everyone, Jack. Not everyone. And of course, coaching gets involved, and we can go on and on about this. But all I'm saying is that there are certain quarterbacks on good teams can win Super Bowls. And there are great quarterbacks like Dan Marino, who you would love to have for 10 years. Great quarterbacks on not really great teams that get one shot, and they came up against the San Francisco 49ers, and that was it. So I'm not a big stat guy. I'll take Eli Manning with his interception to touchdown ratio with 2 Super Bowls over a lot of the so-called elite quarterbacks today. Any day.
Well, Eli Manning only had a 500 regular season record. I want to make a little note, something we didn't mention that actually happened a week ago. One of the legendary football players passed away, Gino Cappelletti. He was only one of 3 players who played every AFL game. The other 2 being George Blanda, the quarterback / kicker, and the center, the Raiders, Jim Otto. Gino Cappelletti was a kicker, wide receiver for the Boston Patriots. So you keep reminding me, Mac, rightfully so. There was an NFL before Super Bowl games were played. When we talk about the greatest of all time, we tend to forget some of the other players, and we only rate players in the Super Bowl era. And maybe I've been guilty of this too, to an extent. But Gino Cappelletti was really, he made his mark before the Super Bowl era with the AFL. And, a great player during his time.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I just did a Spotlight New York Giant special where I put in a guy named Choo Choo, who was a running back for the Giants for 2-3 years and was one of the first running backs in history to run for over 218 yards in one game. But I also brought up the 4th quarterback nobody talks about who won the biggest game in the NFL, and that was Charlie Connerly. How we don't include him because it wasn't.
What do you mean biggest game in the NFL in history?
He won one of the biggest, the biggest game in NFL at that time.
Well, was that in 1956 when they won the NFL championship?
Right.
Well, that wasn't the biggest in history.
It wasn't. No, I didn't say. I said listen to what I'm saying. He was one of the quarterbacks of the Giants who won one of the biggest games in NFL history, counting championships, Super Bowls.
For that time.
Right. So anyway, we forget to talk about him when we talk about Sims and we talk about Eli and we talk about Jeff Hostetler. There was another quarterback that won the biggest game in the NFL, and we don't talk about Charlie Connerly. And how that you have to include him in that discussion, because the NFL championship at that time was the Super Bowl. So I did a spotlight on him, on the Giants, how we forget about players that really impacted teams and won championships at that time was the Super Bowl in the NFL. So I did it was a nice piece anyway. Yeah. So let's start with the NHL here. We'll see if Carter pops in or not. So Tampa Bay gets by.
You have to eliminate it. Tampa by
No,
Lightning.
They should have got a bye. Maybe they should.
Stanley Cup defending champions. I mean,
Maybe
psychologically, you this thing where you want them out.
Jack, you just jump all over me every time I make one little mistake. Oh my God. Anyway, the Tampa Bay Lightning got by the Toronto Maple Leafs in a heck of a game.
That was a heck of a series. I enjoyed watching that.
I mean, I don't know how I would feel right now if I was Toronto. Because, I mean, listen, Toronto's had a bad history lately of, those last deciding games. And that team, Jack, there's no doubt in my mind, could have challenged for the Stanley Cup and maybe won it this year. So I don't know how I feel today if I'm a Toronto Maple.
I watched the series, Mac. Toronto played very well. The Lightning played very well. There has to be one winner, one loser. It doesn't mean the losing team didn't play great as well. You had two teams that played great. That had the intensity of a Stanley Cup final. It was cruel for the Maple Leafs to have to play the Lightning in the first round and for the Lightning to play the Maple Leafs in the first round. But at least the Lightning has back-to-back Stanley Cups to their credit. Yeah. So even had they lost, they could point to the two Stanley Cup victories in a row. Meanwhile, the Maple Leafs haven't been out of the first round since 2004. Do you know the Maple Leafs have had 10 closeout games where they've been, elimination games, where they had the chance to eliminate their opponent and get eliminated themselves, and they're 0-10 in the last 10 games. And they, once again, in games 6 and 7, they lost both by 1 goal. Yeah. They played very, very well. They really did. They had the crowd behind them, the emotions of the city behind them, and yet they came up short in a heartbreaking fashion. Yeah. Heartbreaking fashion.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, it has to do with luck too, and people don't talk about luck. Let's talk about Pittsburgh and the Rangers again. Pittsburgh played their hearts out. The Rangers come back and win that last game. Did it pretty finality. I mean, it was pretty substantial. I think they won 5-2. But the Penguins, I think, surprised a lot of people with their tenacity, Jack. I mean, they played great hockey up to game 7. And again, if I'm the Penguins and I'm Toronto, I'm kind of sitting there wondering, how can you improve on something that's already that good?
Well, it's a question of closing a team out. Like Toronto was up 3-2 against the Lightning and lost games 6 and 7 by 1 goal each. Penguins were up 3-1 against the Rangers and didn't quite close it out. I think the turning point was Sidney Crosby's injury. Even though he was back playing hard in the game 7, he didn't quite seem to be the same force, the same Sidney Crosby, who we've known as one of the great NHL players of all time. And Shesterkin, the Ranger goalie, after a slow start in the series, kind of started getting it together. And now we're into round 2, and the Rangers talk about not closing a game out. They lose to Carolina yesterday, 2-1 in overtime, and the Rangers outplayed them throughout. And Carolina gets the tying goal with like three and a half minutes or so left in the game. And then they win it, shortly after into overtime. And it's a bad loss for the Rangers. It's bad when you feel you were the better team, yet you lost. That takes a lot out of you. If you feel you didn't play up to your capabilities and you lost a tight game, you kind of, blame it on yourself. You still think you have your fate in your own hands. All you have to do is play better and you're going to win. But when you think you've outplayed the other team and you still lost, that could be awfully discouraging.
Well, and this is where I kind of want to bring luck in, okay? We don't talk about luck. And what I mean by luck, Jack, is you take a shot on goal and it bounces off the other team's defender into their own goal. I mean, that doesn't happen that much. It's not supposed to happen. Or you have a shot on the goal and you, by inches, hit the goalie bar and it goes off to the side instead of in. These are things I think that we don't think about during the game. We think, well, it was a hard fought game. We had our chances. The other team was just a little bit better. But in all sports, Jack, there is a degree of luck. The ball bounces a certain way, bounces up to the guy who recovers the fumble and runs for a touchdown. That hardly ever happens, but you see it happen. Bounce right up to the guy in his hands, and he takes off for a touchdown. Or the defender is totally out of position, but it gets tipped right to him. To me, that's luck. And we really don't talk about that much. And some games are decided on luck, especially when the teams are very evenly matched. So, I think maybe we should start, oh, you were lucky. Oh, I make my own luck. No, you were just out of place and it bounced into your hands, or the ball just bounced up into your hands and you kept running. That had nothing to do with what you were doing. So I think we should, if not, talk about it, at least acknowledge that luck has a lot or something to do with sports.
Well, obviously, luck has a lot to do with life. I mean, being in the right spot at the right time. Tragically, you could be in the wrong spot at the wrong time. I mean, luck has a lot to do with it. But, when it comes to sports, to these games, you can't dwell on luck, because if you play the way you're supposed to, it shouldn't come down to one play. It should never point down to one play. Well, that's the reason we won. That's the reason we lost. We were talking about football a little while ago. Scott Norwood misses the 47-yard field goal wide right against the Giants. But then it was pointed out there were so many plays during the game that someone else had executed. It wouldn't have come down to that final kick. That final kick probably wouldn't have even taken place. So there's so many factors involved, and we tend to magnify things. Oh, there was a deflection of this and that. But meanwhile, a couple of other players could have been out of position to cause that to happen. Usually it's a chain reaction. So you're right as far as luck goes, the way the ball is going to bounce or something. The 1960 World Series, when the ball hit Tony Kubek in the throat, it hit a pebble, the ground ball, and bounced up. Had it not, you could say if a pebble wasn't there, he fields it, he gets the out, the Yankees win the World Series. I mean, of course, there's always luck. It has something to do with it, of course. But I don't think, you should dwell on it too much. Lucky bounce.
I don't think you should dwell on it, Jack. And you say, well, there's other plays. Well, that goes both ways, right? A good team makes some bad plays and still can win a game. A bad team can't. That's, to me, is the difference between a good team and bad team, because you're going to make mistakes. The other team's going to make mistakes. It's how do you deal with those mistakes during the game? And does it hurt you that bad that you can't rebound? To me, that's the difference between a good and bad team. But we should at least acknowledge that if something like that happens, that it's just lucky. And then when a ball, like a football, the way it's shaped, bounces straight up into somebody's arms that is running, and he runs for a touchdown where he wouldn't otherwise, that has nothing to do with being out of position, in position.
Well, listen, the immaculate reception where Franco Harris caught the deflection, you might argue, well, that's luck. But I could point out, and that was lucky, but I could point out certain elements of the play that weren't lucky, that Terry Bradshaw managed to get off a pass and avoid getting sacked. I could point out that Franco Harris caught the ball, actually, a hard catch off the deflection. The ball was low. You could point out like a number of other things. Yeah, you're right. Listen, Mac, you're right all along, like with luck. You were talking also about the Giants before the Super Bowl, and the reported greatest game ever played that ushered in the greatness of the NFL, when the Giants lost to the Baltimore Colts on national television, 1958, the legendary game. Frank Gifford swears he got a first down late in the game, meaning the clock would have kept moving and the Colts never would have had the chance for Unitas to have the 2-minute drive to send it into overtime.
Right.
But he says the officials placed the ball in the wrong place. So talk about luck. Had another official placed it where Gifford said the ball should have been, NFL history gets changed to a degree. Yeah, luck has something to do with it. But notice, Mac, the better teams always seem to get lucky again. Lucky over and over. Then how come they have more luck?
Well, the reason is they win, and
They
that's
win because they're better at the end of the game. They
but
make
you know,
their
Jack,
own luck most of the time.
Jack. We've had Jim Jeffcoat, who played for years, Byron Williams, who played football for years, and the difference between a good team and a bad team, what they say competitively, is about that much.
Our co-host Jim Jeffcoat has 107 sacks during his career.
Right.
I'd love to have this conversation with him on Sunday, and I'm going to say, Jim, luck has a lot to do with it. About 65 of your sacks were luck because the player lost his balance. He, got distracted.
Well, I'll bet you Jim Jeffcoat will say 5 to 10 of them sacks were lucky, because he wasn't even looking for the quarterback and fell right into him. I bet he would say that. I don't think he'd say 65, but I'd say give a few to luck.
But luck evens out. But what about all the times he was trying to chase down the quarterback? He had him in his grasp, and the quarterback somehow got rid of the ball, or the official called a penalty elsewhere, and he didn't get credit.
Or just lost his footing and fell, right? Who knows?
Right. I mean,
that's true, Jack. I'll agree.
No. Listen, luck has. You're right, Mac. You're 100% right. Luck is a very important element, But notice the better players, the better teams, they seem to get lucky a little more.
It seems that way, don't it?
Yeah.
So let's again. You brought up the Rangers losing in overtime. To the Hurricanes. The Avalanche beat the Blues 3-2 in overtime. Everybody thought the Avalanche was just going to roll in. Carter, when he was on the show, said the Blues have a very good team. I still think Avalanche, it's one game at a time, right, Jack? That's how you judge.
One game. I can't figure out the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm not even close to saying who would win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's a Stanley Cup. Obviously, the Tampa Bay Lightning would be the favorites based on their back-to-back cups, being defending champions. But it could play out in the strangest ways going forward.
I definitely agree with that, Jack. I definitely agree, because one game at a time, and if you're not, and if you win this one, you lose the next one, we're back to 0-0 again. Same thing with the playoffs, right? I mean, the NBA playoffs. Every game is its own importance when you come down to it. So, let's talk a little bit. Well, let's take a break first, Jack, and then when we come back, we got a lot of MLB to talk about. And I got a lot of stuff to talk to you about as far as Major League Baseball goes.
Aren't the Yankees doing great, Mac? Isn't it wonderful?
I heard that rumor, Jack. I'm not sure, though. I heard that they were doing pretty well this year, that maybe they got a pretty good team. We'll see. We'll talk about it a little bit when I get back. So, folks, stick around. We'll be back after these messages. And let me see if I can find it. Here we go. And here comes my overlay. And we'll see you in a minute, folks.
You worked too hard, you ate too much, the cheesesteak made you greedy. Let your aching head and stomach hear this message from old Speedy. Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Those Speedy bubbles relieve your upset stomach and headache fast. For acid indigestion alone, Alka-Seltzer Gold. Oh, what a relief it is. What a relief.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I'm here to say I am the top banana in the world today. Now you know the best bananas in the land. So don't slip up with an inferior brand. When it says Chiquita, it's a very good day to buy bananas.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When the job is done, this guy'll be ready to dig into something mighty good to eat.
How do you handle a hungry man? The manhandlers.
One of the manhandlers is Campbell's vegetable beef. Gets a man-sized supper off to a good hot start. Good.
The manhandlers.
If you're talking, they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, live on Roku, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack, as we update you in all the sports from the weekend. And, of course, we'll be talking a little bit about other stuff as we go along. Jack, before I get to the baseball, like I promised everybody, I wanted to get your opinion, because I don't think I asked you yet, about the Rangers' new hire. The Islanders' new hire, excuse me. Lambert being put in for Trotz. He was a Trotz assistant for 11 years. So I guess maybe, the GM thinks that maybe he's more of a better communicator. I'm not sure. But basically, you're firing Trotz to bring in Trotz.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I think it's a control thing with Lou Lamoriello. Consider when he ran the New Jersey Devils, he had 8 coaches in 16 years. Think that's one coach every 2 years, and they won 3 Stanley Cups during that time. That's insane. He goes through coaches very quickly. And anyone working for Lou Lamoriello, you better do it for the money. You better do it for the contract, because you're not going to be there long. Even if you win a Stanley Cup, heaven forbid you get off to a slow start the next year, you could be gone. Might not even have a chance to finish out the following season, even if you win the Stanley Cup the year before. And it kind of puzzles you why he would have a Barry Trotz assistant. The only thing I could think about, maybe Barry Trotz was pushing back on Lou Lamoriello, because Barry Trotz has that kind of power. He was a Stanley Cup winning coach with the Washington Capitals, and Barry Trotz can easily get another job in the NFL somewhere else. Someone's going to hire him, one of the other teams. So he had that type of power. And he's an older guy like Lou Lamoriello. They're two old dinosaurs. So he could push back on Lou Lamoriello. And maybe Lou Lamoriello wanted someone who was subservient to him, someone who would, maybe someone who would listen to everything Lou Lamoriello told him. I hate to use the word a Lou Lamoriello puppet, but he'd have to do exactly what Lou Lamoriello wanted. Maybe Barry Trotz wasn't, doing that. We don't know what went on behind the scenes with the guys. But listen, the bottom line is the Islanders did have a disappointing year last year. Okay? I mean, they didn't make the play this past season. They didn't make the playoffs. So if you want to use that as justification for Lou Lamoriello moving on from Barry Trotz, you can. But you're not going to get that many coaches with the profile of Barry Trotz, the resume, the knowledge, the respect.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if he went out and got a coach that was more offensive oriented, or maybe brings a different type of style to the Islanders, but that hiring of Lance Lambert shows me something else. And unless, like I said, unless he's just a better communicator in the GM's mind than Trotz is, maybe he thinks he can get the point across better. But as you mentioned, I mean, even if you win a Stanley Cup, you're gone in a couple of years. So, I mean, that to me,
couple of years. Now you don't last a couple of years even after winning the cup.
But don't you think that hurts an organization, Jack, in a way? I mean, don't you think that if you're a winning organization and you get rid of the coach who's helped build that winning organization, unless you think you're the only reason why it's that way, that hurts the organization?
No, I'm going to say, as distasteful as we might find what Lou Lamoriello does, he's been successful. You can't argue with success. The same way, George Steinbrenner, when in the Yankees' heyday, when they were winning the late 70s, people were very mad at Steinbrenner, but he was getting results with the Yankees. And Lou Lamoriello has gotten results wherever he's went. But this past season, it's not like Lou Lamoriello made great moves, and his part as a GM running the team that would, help Barry Trotz and the Islanders. But Lou Lamoriello, some people believe there's a philosophy, Mac. They feel there has to be a constant turnover, constant changes, because it brings a certain freshness to whatever they're doing.
And let's not forget, Jack, that George Steinbrenner was the owner of the team, not the GM. He was the owner of the team. And, what he says goes anyway. I mean, it doesn't really matter who the GM is. And, of course, Lou Lamoriello does not own.
Well, no, but he was given full control.
Well,
and hockey owners, Mac, let me throw this by you, okay? Let's make believe you were an owner, okay? And I was an owner. Our knowledge of all the sports. We would feel we had a lot of knowledge of baseball. To be involved, we try not to step on people's toes too much, but we'd be very involved, you and I, right? In baseball, we'd be involved in football. We would be a little less involved in basketball, but still involved. But you and I, if we own hockey teams, how much do we really know about hockey to be overly involved? I'm not going to know, wow, we have to trade for right wing from the Nashville Predators. You know,
but Jack, I
play it
think
the way we would in the other sports.
I think that if I was to eventually buy a hockey team, I would get to know everything I could about hockey because I don't trust anybody else to make decisions without my involvement. And what I mean by involvement is either yes or sometimes just no, or do what you think is right might be one of my decisions. But if I'm going to buy a hockey team, I'm going to get to know hockey as well as the next person before I make that buy. That's just me. Now, Carlos mentions that, Trotz won with a team that was destined to win with the right players. Carlos, I could say that about almost every coach in any sport. You could say that about Joe Torre. You could say that, about, Kansas City. Listen, you could say that about almost any team. So I understand you don't like Trotz for whatever reason.
Let me tell you with that destiny talk. I mean, the destiny talk seems very nice after the fact, after the team wins, to say they were destined to win it.
Right.
How many times have we heard a team is destined to win beforehand and they don't? And they don't. And then no one wants to talk about it afterwards. I don't hear Carlos saying the Buffalo Bills were destined to win the Super Bowl. They lost 4 in a row. Weren't they destined to finally win it?
Yeah,
and they haven't won a Super Bowl yet, the Bills. Where's the destiny with the Bills? Okay?
I agree.
I don't want to hear destiny. The Cleveland Indians come very close to winning the World Series some years back, a storied franchise, but they haven't won a World Series in ages. I mean, come on. I don't want to hear about all this destiny talk afterwards that they were destined to win.
Right. I agree, Jack. You got to have a good coach. I don't care. Or he has to have some kind of influence on the team itself. I mean, right? The Dodgers are destined to win the World Series, right? We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Who's destined to win this year? Finally, the World Series.
Well, we're gonna get into that, Jack. I don't want you to jump the gun, but we're gonna talk a little bit about that after we go over the standings right now, which we got to catch everybody up on. So let's go to AL East. The Yankees right now still with the best record in baseball at 28-9. The Rays at 23-15, and the Blue Jays at 20-18. In the Central, the Twins are the only team over 500 at 22-16. In the West, the Astros are followed by the Angels. The Astros 24-14, the Angels 24-16. In the National League East, the Mets are 25-14. They're also the only team in that division over 500 right now. Milwaukee is at 24-14. The Cards follow them at 20-17. In the National League West, the Dodgers are 25-12. The Padres at 23-14, and the Giants at 22-15. So those are the teams of all the teams over 500. I'm not going to waste my time, on the Reds and stuff until they get over 500, or any team at this point. So let's do the scores real quick. The Rays beat Detroit 6-1. Milwaukee beats Atlanta 7-6. The Rockies beat San Francisco 5-3. The Twins win 14-4 over the A's. The Dodgers beat Arizona 5-3. Boston beats Houston 5-1. The Nationals beat the Marlins 5-4. Philly beats the Padres 3-0. The Yankees get by Baltimore 3-2. Seattle beats the Jays 5-1. The Mets beat the Cards 11-4. Let's see. Pittsburgh beat Chicago 3-2. Rangers beat the Angels 6-5. And Kansas City beats the White Sox 6-5. So, Jack, it's quarter of the season right now. And right now, I'm going to give you my top 5 teams in baseball, period, my power ranking. And I know you're probably not ready for this, so maybe you can come up with on the fly or make comments on my power rankings right now in Major League Baseball. So at first, I'm going to give it to the Los Angeles Dodgers. I think that the Yankees come in second because the Dodgers play in a tougher division. And the competition has to have something to do with it, right? I think the Padres and the Giants are better than the Jays and better than the Rays. And I think that conference is very tough. So with a good record like that, I give them the number 1 rating. The Yankees would be number 2 at 28-9. That would be my second team in there. My third would be the New York Mets for now. We saw last night that Scherzer left the game with some pain in his left side. And that's the third starting pitcher, Jack, right now that might be out for the Mets. Now that, getting older players, we know this type of thing can happen. So right now, just at this point, I'm going to make the Mets number 3. Number 4 is the Houston Astros. I think the Astros just have a good team, offensive, defensive. They got good defense. They got a little power. They play hard. And I think the Astros right now are the 4th best team in baseball. And then number 5, Jack, I'm going to give to the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers got a good, very good pitching staff, and they know how to manufacture runs without power. So what are your thoughts on my top 5, starting with the Dodgers, Yankees, and Mets? Let's do the top 3 first.
I mean, it's viable, Mac. I'm not a believer in power rankings. I think they're complete nonsense in baseball because all the team has to do is go into the weekend, get swept, and what does it do for their power ranking? If they're number 3 in the power rankings, they all of a sudden are going to fall out of the top 10 at this point in the season, or go from 3 to number 9. It's like the weather changes back and forth. Certain teams we know are going to be there, which I'll agree with your power rankings. It's hard to envision the Dodgers having a collapse and the Dodgers finishing with a record of 83-79 on the season. It's so hard to envision that. So the Dodgers are going to be there at the end. But I noticed in your power rankings who was left out. Why are the Giants left out? They're in 3rd place right now, but a close 3rd.
Yes.
I mean, in 2 weeks, they could be in 1st place. They won 107 games last year. So the Giants are off to an okay start, not compared to last year, though, but under normal circumstances. So what are the power rankings? What do we make out of that? Like you mentioned Houston in your top 5. Why is that based on Houston's reputation or where they're at now?
Yes.
Right, because they went to the World Series last year. They've been traditional winners, controversy withstanding. So I think these power rankings are based on reputation in part. And a team like the Angels, that's very intriguing. Every year they've been disappointing. Every year after year we expect more out of them, and they don't produce. And this year they've been producing finally. Mike Trout is back healthy. He hasn't lost a beat. Now they finally seem to be putting some players around him. So maybe the Angels can maintain what they have. One team that has disappointed the heck out of me is the Toronto Blue Jays. They haven't been a disaster. They're a couple of games over 500, but to me, disappointing. I thought they'd hit the ground running. They just missed getting a playoff berth last year. They finished strongly, and I would have thought they would have gotten off to a good start, that this was going to be their year, that they were going to take a serious run at the World Series, and that's the team I picked. I picked to win the World Series, and I'm going to stay the course with them. Sure. Blue Jays over the Dodgers. I haven't abandoned them, but I'm just very, very disappointed in them. There's certain teams, Mac, that you didn't want to give any attention to, saying if they're not playing at least 500, you don't even want to talk about them. But certain of those teams are going to, surge at a certain point. Sure. And they're going to get into the win column. They're going to make a serious run at the playoffs, maybe make the playoffs, such as the St. Louis Cardinals did last year. But for some teams, I just don't think there's any way they're coming back, even if they improve. Like last year, you were one of the few people, who picked the Boston Red Sox to actually go to the playoffs. I didn't think they'd be anywhere close to being a playoff team. Yet the Red Sox are off to a horrendous start this year, and you're not optimistic about them coming back. I'm not optimistic. The Cincinnati Reds we didn't think would be as terrible as they were. But there's certain other teams that, have very poor records who I expect more out of. You joke with me about the Detroit Lions. Well, what about the Detroit Tigers? I think they've been playing terribly. but I think they have a lot of upside, and I think they're going to surge at a certain point. The White Sox, they were picked by most to win this Central Division in the AL. They're like, what are they, a game under 500? But they're in a weak division. The Twins only a few games up. So that could change very, very, very rapidly. But I think for now, your power ratings, I mean, how can you not rate the Yankees there? How can you not rate the Dodgers? What about the Padres? Did you mention them?
No, and I'm going to tell you why, Jack. And it's the same thing as I'm thinking level of competition. I think that has to be taken into consideration. And of course, the power rankings will change. At the half of the year, I'll give you my next power rankings. But I think level of competition means a lot. So the Dodgers that's why I give them number one, because they're going up against the Padres and the Giants. But that also works against those two teams, right? Because, you look at Milwaukee, who's really their competition? There's nobody there that's really their
St. Louis.
I mean, okay, maybe. But
St. Louis is always contending. They always find a way to contend. And
I don't think the Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals overall are strong as the Giants or the Dodgers. I don't think that. I'm not saying that they're not going to be there for a wild card team. I just think that in certain cases, like the Yankees, now, listen, they've been playing Baltimore, and they're playing Baltimore a lot too. And let's not forget that, right? I mean, they
lost to Baltimore last year a number of times.
I know they did. I'm talking about this year, Jack. So they've played Baltimore, and they're going to be playing Baltimore a lot in the beginning of the season. Now, I picked the Yankees to win the division, so I'm not making excuses. But the Dodgers don't have that advantage where they've got a team that they can go in and kick around. So that's why I give the Dodgers just that little edge. I'm not saying that if they played today that the Yankees wouldn't beat the Dodgers. I'm just saying when I looked at this right now, I took in consideration the division they're in. And that's why I said the Mets right just now, because if Scherzer's gone for a while, DeGrom's not back till July, what they're saying. Their other good starting pitcher is out. He'll be out for a few weeks. And now maybe Scherzer. If you lose those three pitchers, I mean, it's going to be hard to stay at that pace they're at right now. So it's going to change, Jack. There's no doubt there's going to be teams that surge. But I don't think any five of the teams I gave you will collapse in their division. I don't think they'll collapse. They'll be
what do you call collapse? I think the Mets are something like 11 games over 500. And the Mets were in first place most of the season last year. They were treading water, but the rest of the NL East was so poor. The Mets were just able to maintain the lead. And then we expected the Mets to start playing well last year. Even when they went first place, they were just so-so. And the Mets just got worse and worse and worse. And eventually the NL East started to win. And come August, they started to overtake the Mets, and the Mets just fell apart. I mean, the Mets will have a winning record, but what are we calling, the Mets season in reality? Let's say the 11 games over 500 now, and they go 500 the rest of the way. You could be talking about an 87-75 record on the season, which might not make the playoffs.
It's true.
And
But
listen, fairness to the Mets, if you have your two aces, DeGrom and Scherzer out, okay? Can you really fault the team? You were talking about luck before. Scherzer, we don't know. He took himself out of the game. He's getting an MRI on his arm. And we're going to see what the deal is with that. We don't know DeGrom's status when he might come back.
They're talking July, Jack.
Right. So
that's a ways away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got this month and a half.
And the Mets everyday lineup too is, it's okay, but it's so I don't want to say there are holes there. Nemo's playing well. Jeff McNeil is playing well. You have to count heavily on Alonso and Lindor. I think basically an average player being paid superstar. I can't resist this.
Oh my God.
The idiotic 10-year deal.
Stop with that.
Listen, Steve Cohen has company in the Fools Club, the 10-year contract Fools Club.
Listen.
Steve Cohn's a good guy. Don't get me wrong. He's a
Listen,
good
Lindor,
guy. The big
Lindor is a very good young shortstop with a lot of upside for the next, I'd say, 5 years.
Skills are declining, Mac.
Well, I don't know. How do you feel? He's young. He's only like 24. He's only 24 years old, Jack.
No. Lindor's like 28 now, I think.
I don't know.
Got it wrong. Look it up.
I'd have to look that up. I think he's young.
You got to look it up. Lindor's
I would have to look it up. He might be.
You're wrong on that, Mac.
But the point is, he wanted the best shortstop available at that time, who was an unbelievable player with his last team, and he went got Lindor. I'm glad he did it.
Fine, he traded for Lindor. Lindor had 1 year.
He signed him.
Right. Well, he didn't have to sign him for that money.
Well, that's
at that
what
point.
Lindor
You know what
wanted.
he could have done? You know what he should have done?
Well,
let Lindor play out the year, become a free agent, and the money that he gave Lindor would have jumped out as a free agent. Are you kidding me?
Jack,
Lindor would have been back with the
Jack,
Mets. But you want to know something? If he didn't sign Lindor wouldn't have gotten an offer anywhere close to what he was given.
It's all done. It's been done.
I said it was dumb when it was being negotiated.
So that's fine.
Listen, the Angels.
But it's all done, Jack. It's all done. The Mets signed him for 10 years, and they got themselves a hell of a shortstop. And that's all.
He's not a hell of a shortstop anymore.
Well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion.
A good fielder, a better than average fielder, a below average hitter. That's what they basically got a average to slightly above average.
Listen,
player.
Jack,
and he's not even going to be an above average player a few years
I'm going to tell you something, Jack. I'm going to get his exact stats because I know before he came to the Mets, he was hitting the heck out of the baseball. So I'm going to get his exact stats. I'm going to throw them in your face.
His numbers were declining the year before he came to the Mets.
Jack. So was Stanton's number. A lot of players' numbers.
No, Mac. When the Yankees got Stanton, you could say it was a bad contract.
It is a bad contract. It is, Jack.
59 home run year, 59 homers.
Yeah, it is a bad contract. I'm not going to say it is. It is played. We know it's a bad contract.
Which contract? Lindor, you mean?
Stanton's contract is a bad contract. We know that. We already know that. I mean, that's just it's fact. I'm going to get Lindor's stats, and I'm going to bring them next time we talk. And I'm going to tell you what the stats are. And I don't want to hear, well, they're declining. I don't want to hear that.
I want to hear what he did, what he's been doing this year and what he did last year with the Mets.
You're talking about 1 year, Jack. People have a bad year every now and then.
He's on the bad. He's coming up. His last year in Cleveland.
So did LeMahieu. So did LeMahieu have a down year, Jack. I mean, it happens, right?
What are we talking about? LeMahieu hit 324.
Last year he hit 324.
No, but he was signed already. And LeMahieu was signed for a total of $90 million for 6 years. Lindor was signed for $341 million for for 11 years.
I wanted his stats before he got to the Mets. Yes. But anyway,
I know sometimes Lindor was a outstanding player at Cleveland most of the time.
Thank you.
Of course he was. That got nothing to do with the contract, Mac. Anthony Rendon was signed for a 10-year contract by the Angels as a free agent. He was coming off a championship season with the Washington Nationals. He had outstanding numbers. It was a stupid contract. Rendon was given 10 years by the Angels, and it's biting him already. Albert Pujols got a 10-year contract from the Angels. It was a foolish contract as it turned out. His stats were great with St. Louis.
His career batting average is .277. That's his career batting average.
What did he do his last year at Cleveland?
Last year at Cleveland, he was batting .258.
Thank you, Mac.
But before that, he batted 284.
I don't care what he did the year before that. He was declining. It's
That
what
does
a
check.
guy can do for you going forward, Mac.
So now, by the end of the year, if Lindor say he hits 280, what are you going to say then? Is he rebound?
Mac,
is he rebounding then?
You worked a 6-hour shift, Mac, and you averaged 90 pizzas the first 5 years of your shift. The last year of your shift, you were down to 55 pizzas. That means your performance was declining.
Right.
They're not going to sign you like you were the 90 pizza guy.
Well, then suppose I was injured or I was burned or for some reason I couldn't perform at that high level.
But he wasn't. Lindor wasn't.
I don't know that for a fact. I'd have to look that up also. All I know, Jack, is Lindor is one of the best shortstops in the league today. He might not be.
I don't think he could go there. Listen, Carlos Correa would have been a better bet to sign for that type of money.
Well, he wasn't available.
But I wouldn't have signed Correa for the 10-year deal. And the team.
But that, Jack, you are not Steve Cohen. You're not that. Right? So, I mean.
Look, Steve Cohen's got the money. I admire Steve Cohen for trying to make things happen. He just didn't have a good business sense with Lindor.
Well,
that type of deal.
Again, business sense, I think Steve Cohen has a lot of business sense, more than you and me put together. So if Steve Cohen.
Baseball business sense, Matt.
All right. So if he didn't think he would get some kind of return, look at baseball as a business, Jack. If he didn't think he would get some kind of return out of Lindor, whether it's sales, whether it's tickets, whether it's a better shortstop than he had, which it is, and that could possibly do what he did in the past, I don't think he would have signed him, Jack. I don't think Steve Cohen just picked Steve Lindor out of a hat.
Steve Cohen was, you want to know why he signed Lindor in part. They got Lindor. It was very exciting when the Mets picked up Lindor, because he's a big name player, 4-time Golden Glove winner. Obviously, he's excellent defensively, brings a good attitude to the team and all. So it was exciting news for the Mets to get Lindor. But Steve Cohen wasn't thinking long term. What's this guy going to produce? That's what happens with all these contracts, Mac.
That's the world, Jack. That's the world of Jack. That's the world of baseball today for the most part. If you want one of those guys that you think can get you a World Series or bring excitement for a few years to your team because they're better than average or maybe even better than average, they sign them to long-term deals. That's what they do, Jack. And whether you agree with Steve Cohen or you agree with the Texas Rangers or you agree with the Angels, this is what teams do.
I'm going to tell you something. Lindor's getting paid $31 million a year. After this season, he has 9 years left. If Steve Cohen called up all the major league teams and he said, you take Lindor off our hands, you pay him $20 million a year, and we'll pay the remaining $11 million a year for the next 9 years, all the teams are going, no, thank you.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't necessarily agree with you there. I think there will be some teams that would do it. If you're talking 20 million a year, I think there would be some teams that would do that. Folks, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back on the other side. We still got a lot to talk about, Jack. So off Lindor, your favorite subject.
I like it. He seems pleasant. Listen, he's a nice player.
We'll be right back, folks. We'll be right back.
Money in that amount of years.
I heard you want to be a frito bandido like me. You do? Then you must sing the bandido song. Let's sing together. You just follow the bouncing Fritos corn chips bag. Ay, 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 ay. I am the frito bandido. Hey, I like Fritos corn chips. I love them, I do. I want Fritos corn chips. I'll get them from you. Ay, 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 ay. Oh, I am the Frito Bandito. Give me Fritos corn chips and I'll be your friend. The Frito Bandito, you must not offend. Now, boys and girls, you are Frito Banditos too. You sing the Frito Bandito song and you loco for crunchy Fritos corn chips. That's nice. Munch, munch, munchy bunchy Fritos corn chips.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get us any.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch. We're live on Roku, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook right now. So let me get a couple of the promos out of the way, Jack. We just played the promo for Dream Ride. We're a proud sponsor of that organization, the Hometown Buffet, that runs a lot of different organizations underneath them. That is like military, pet adoption, stuff like that, where they have different events and different things. But the Dream Ride is special to me because it helps out kids and some adults that are mentally challenged. Special Olympics. They give them concerts for a weekend. They treat them like royalty down there. So if you can make it, 26th through 28th at the Farmington Polo Grounds in Connecticut. If you can't, go to dreamride.org and give from your heart. Jack will be on Monday night. I might as well get this out of the way. We'll be telling you a couple more times with Frank Lotierzo on Glove Fist. That's his and Frank's boxing show. So if you guys love boxing, tune into Glove Fist Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central. Tomorrow, folks, I won't be in. I got some things I got to take care of. Philly Sports Guy will be guest hosting the show with Jack, and there'll be the same guest should be coming in if everything works out correctly, which I have no doubt it will. So the show will go on tomorrow from 8 to 10 a.m. With the Philly guy kind of guest hosting with Jack. So that'll be exciting for you. We'll be back Saturday with our debate show and Sunday This Week in Sports. So as I said, we're live Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. So Jack, let's get to another interesting topic that I brought up months ago when people said it ain't a big story and la, 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 la. And of course, it's the NIL, the names and likeness of players that are now making money off this, as they all have agents right now that are making sure that happens. This came back to the forefront yesterday with head coach Dick Saban, who kind of scolded Texas A&M and some other teams about using this as a recruitment tool to get players to go to their school, paying them to play. And Saban, who was all for the NIL as it first came out, saying players should be paid for their likeness, now kind of is talking about using as a recruitment. Now, Jack, I don't think Nick Saban is an ignorant man. I think that Nick Saban should have looked ahead and said, well, of course this is going to happen with players having agents. And now he's kind of complaining about it. And the speech he gave was in front of business owners out there in Alabama, saying that they can't keep up in the future with these other teams, kind of sending a silent message to them like, hey, we need you too. And it's also worthy to be noted that Alabama's players last year, under this name and likeness new rule, made over $3 million. So he says he's not using it as a recruitment, but the players that are there are still getting money. So I imagine when a recruit comes in, he doesn't mention that at all. I guess.
Well, it's just the same Nick Saban who I hear before he was at Alabama, when he would move from, to different jobs, would look a player in the eye and tell the player, I'm not going anywhere at all. Right. And then 3 days later, in the case of Michael Law, an offensive tackle, he told that to Michael Law. Reportedly, it was said he's going nowhere at all. He's going to be at the school as a coach, and then he left elsewhere. I mean, so I don't want to hear Nick Saban talking about all these ethics and so on. I think it's a case that coaches are going to speak out and complain because other coaches can take more advantage of the new rules, do a better job than they can.
Well, it's supposed to be a rule not to do this, Jack. Of course, I don't know how you enforce it. That was, the NCAA says it's not supposed to be used as a recruitment tool. But how can you not? Players right now are asking how much money is available. That's the first question they ask. Nothing about education. And maybe, playing for Alabama still holds some kind of some enchantment where you want to play for Alabama and Nick Saban, sort of like the Yankees. But money talks, Jack. And if you're a player that comes from, a family that has had hard times or isn't even middle class, and some that are even middle class, when you start flashing all this money around, I mean, that becomes a major principle in why they go to a different team. And I get that. I think everybody does. But here's Nick Saban saying it's not supposed to be used like that. And again, he's talking to business owners at Alabama while saying this. So Deion Sanders fires back. Now, here's a guy who thinks we're ignorant. And he says, well, the team that Deion coaches for just got the #1 defensive back recruit in the country to come to their school. I think it's Trevon. Let me see if I get the name right here. Trevon Harris, I think is his name. But he says, well, we didn't pay him to come there. And we know that Deion Sanders personally didn't pay him to come there. We know that the university did not personally or have anything to do with paying that defensive back to come to his team. But we also aren't stupid. And we know that somebody associated with that university paid that player to come there, Jack.
Well, that went on all the time. I mean, what else is new? I mean, didn't athletes get money under the table? I mean, all the time. I mean, it's nothing new. It's just being done legally now, in a sense. That's the only difference. It's finally come out, and you don't have to hide it what you do. And the universities, aren't having quite the same control of the situation the athlete is now. You know, he can have an agent figure out with his likeness what to do. I mean, the same thing is basically going on, but the landscape has changed and the money's greater too.
Right.
I mean, when you're paying under the table, you usually can't pay quite as much. But now, if you could do it in a legal sense, you can work out deals, negotiate more, and squeeze out more money out of it. And that's what the athletes are doing now.
Yeah. And you know, if you team that up with the portal, it becomes free agency. It becomes professional free agency, right? So my question to you, Jack, is this. And of course, the agent's going to be in the player's ear saying, get what you can while you can get it, because you don't know how long it's going to last. And then you're going to have other people in his ear saying, listen, you go there, you get education. If you get injured, you're set for life. If you
I
get
have an idea, Mac.
Go ahead.
I have a great idea. No one's ever mentioned it before, to my knowledge. How about a high school draft? The colleges can draft players out of high school. Now, they don't have to go to that college. But if they want to play football, they've got to go to the college that drafts them. And if they don't want to, let them go to any college they want for their education. Okay, they can go anywhere they want, but if they're going to play football or play basketball, they have to go to the school that then drafts them.
So how would they
sports?
How would they set that up? You're talking thousands of colleges, Jack. So how would you set that up? I'm not disagreeing with your idea. I think it's a fantastic idea because if it's professional, let's make it professional, right?
Right. Let them go to school, get an education, and not play sports. Otherwise, then they can go wherever the heck they want.
Which you could get a scholarship on too. Go ahead, Jack.
Right. They could get a scholarship, a non-sports scholarship if they're worthy of that. Okay.
Right. So, but I mean, I like the premise. I love the premise because if they're professional, let's treat them like that. But how, NFL has only, 32 teams? Am I right?
32.
Now you're talking thousands of colleges, Jack. So how would you set up a draft like that?
That is a great, you want to know something? It's a great point, but you take all the Division I schools, the ones with the weakest records go first. The heck with the Alabamas. The heck with the Michigans, the heck with the Georgias, okay? They go last. That's just the way it's going to get worked. You get the Division I schools, and they get to pick first to level it out the same way they do in the NFL. Why should these other programs be given a certain benefit? You set up a draft. Listen, you set up a draft and then maybe like 5 rounds or whatever. You'd need more actually, because if you're filling up your whole team, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, if they're going to act like they're professional teams and the athletes are getting money, and look what the coaches are getting paid. Nick Saban has the audacity to complain. What's he making? $12 million a year on his job or so?
I love the premise. I think there's something that we would have to do with the execution of this premise, though, because
the execution isn't. It's hard. Maybe do it. Maybe do it in a lottery, or maybe do it in reverse. Mac, they can also do it in reverse. The teams with the best records go first. They keep getting rewarded, getting the first pick instead of the teams with the weakest records. Maybe we do it that way. Or maybe instead of picking one player at a time, they could get to pick 3 or 4 players per round. Okay, we're taking these 3 or 4, then the next team goes and takes 3 or 4, then the next team. Maybe something along those lines.
Or maybe you have more than one draft. The draft of the best for the best teams in the country, and then have a second draft for the smaller schools, where they can draft their players too, because some of them are going to make a little bit of money too. Could be with a local.
The smaller schools players aren't likely to get those endorsement deals for likeness.
Right, I agree, but they will. They can, Jack. They can get like I said, like a local endorsement from the car dealership or the hot dog place down the street. Right, they could get something. The point I'm making is that you got Division I schools, and you're still talking thousands, right? So Division 1A schools, and then you got the Division 1 AA, and you got Division 2. So I mean, it goes down. You know, and you're like I said, you're talking tens of thousands of schools. It would be hard to do. But I love the premise, and I got to think about that, because I think if we put our heads together and we're not just talking about it off the cuff, we could come up with something, Jack, that might be relevant and thought-provoking, where they do have a high school draft. Why not? Why not? I mean, they're treated.
Yeah. You know, the high school players could complain and say, well, they can't tell us where to go to college.
Right.
No, they're only telling you where you could play football. Football, sports is a privilege. You go to college, okay?
Right.
Sports and reality is just supposed to be an extracurricular activity in college. You're not there. You're not getting a degree in football or basketball.
Right.
You're playing a recreational activity, even though it's competitive. And it's a lot of revenue for the school, okay? Yeah. And go to whatever school you want, but if you want to play that sport, you got to go where you're drafted. If you don't want it, good luck to you. Go elsewhere. Yeah. I might make a little exception to that rule. I might adjust it, Mac. If a student could legitimately get an academic scholarship, a music scholarship, on a non-sports scholarship,
right.
I would give them a waiver and let them go and play sports as well. They wouldn't have to be part of the draft if they're already in the school.
If you're just going to play football, right?
Reason.
Right. If you're just going to play a particular sport, then you're in the draft, and then they can use a portal like they do in the NFL as a free agent, right? So I mean, you can say, for instance, say Notre Dame drafts you, and Notre Dame's not going to give you the kind of money that Oklahoma does. So you could put in for that Oklahoma draft, I mean, the Oklahoma portal, but Oklahoma would have to give compensation to Notre Dame. So let's just do it, right?
Well, Mac, I'm asking this, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm pretty confident I'm right. A fair percentage of the players who are playing for universities, if they weren't playing sports and they just submitted their academic transcript, I think a good percentage would get turned down. They wouldn't be accepted as students in the school. And I'm not even talking scholarships. I'm not talking scholarships.
Just to get along.
They just want to enroll as students in the school.
Just to get along.
Get turned down.
I agree, Jack. I agree. Just to get that loan, they probably would be turned down. I agree. I think you would be talking about a very big percentage of that, not half, but up there where this would happen. I agree, Jack. I agree. So we'll put our heads together sometime, and we're gonna come up with a system that, since the federal government, the Supreme Court said it was good, well, let's set it up like the NFL, or let's set it up like the NBA, and let's do it, and then we'll see what the players and the agents think. That would be very, very cool thing to do. So, Jack, let's get a little bit into the NFL. We already talked about Bradbury, right? And that major signing. Well, there was a major signing.
Well, that's not major, Brad. James
well,
Brad.
To me, it is for the Eagles. For the Eagles, I think it is, Jack. But another big signing was the Green Bay Packers, who signed a cornerback for over $24.3 million. And of course, they couldn't afford, the guy that went to Oakland. You couldn't afford him, but could afford a cornerback. Now, that's not where I want to go with this. The point is that you got cornerbacks out there just as good, a little bit younger. You know, he was hurt last year, Javier. I'm trying to remember his last name, who they signed, the Green Bay Packers. And he was an All-Pro before that. But you got people like, a Diggs sitting over there at Dallas, who's coming up on a contract, who had a pretty good year last year. So, again, the bar is set high by a team, like they did with Watson. And Major League Baseball always complains about this, right? Oh, well, the owners can sign to whatever they want. You know, they can do whatever they want. They can control, basically the market. So here we go with a cornerback making much money, if not more, than some of the very good quarterbacks in the NFL. We're talking better than Garoppolo. We're talking, $24.3 million is a lot of money for a position player, just like they're doing with the defensive ends and the wide receivers. So whose fault is this, Jack? Or is there any fault that should be blamed for an owner jumping up and signing a cornerback to this amount of money?
No, I don't think there's any fault anywhere. The NFL can't be compared to Major League Baseball because in Major League Baseball, all contracts seem to be guaranteed. In the NFL, only a portion of contracts is guaranteed.
Right, they're starting to be.
Right, so teams usually have a way they could move on from contracts, and they're very careful in this day and age not to take a risk, to take a cap hit. They're kind of protecting themselves against that. And when they do make a bold move and sign someone to a mega contract, if it's a non-quarterback, they usually wait a while and they try to stretch it out as long as it could go. And by that time, there's a lot of discontent, like in Devontae Adams, the Green Bay Packer receiver. It was assumed he might want to stay at Green Bay because Aaron Rodgers is there. But, he moved on to the Raiders without any apprehension. So he could play with his college quarterback, Derek Carr, there. And he got the contract he wanted. It's supply and demand in the positions. These teams are making moves for the most part in which they're willing to pay a high price for that year. But a lot of times they have clauses in the contract when it goes beyond the year. There are ways they can move on from it without really taking a cap hit. I mean, they know what they're doing. That's why they have certain cap specialists that work with the GMs to make them understand. And they're very meticulous with the way they dot everything.
Oh, for the most part, I agree with you. And that was what was such the big problem a lot of owners had with them signing Watson, because it was all guaranteed, right? So this is where
I think the problem the owners had with Cleveland signing Watson, it raised the bar.
Well, it did, Jack. It did, Jack.
A lot more now.
It did, but what the Ravens owner said was because it was all guaranteed. Not so much the amount of money, but the whole contract is guaranteed. So no other quarterbacks are going to be wanting the guarantee.
It's the only way they would have gotten Deshaun Watson, Cleveland, to guarantee him, the 230. I think it was virtually all guaranteed.
Right,
the 230 million, of it is guaranteed, and it was the only way they were going to get him to come.
Right, and this is why the Ravens owner was so upset. It wasn't the amount; it was the amount that was guaranteed. So other quarterbacks like Jackson are going to look at it and say, "Well, I don't care about the 240 million. How much are you guaranteeing me that?" And I think that's why the Ravens owner was upset with the Cleveland owner. But anyway,
it makes it harder for the Baltimore Ravens to sign Lamar Jackson.
Right.
They wanted to re-sign him, but they don't want it to be at too stiff of a price, Right. And now Lamar Jackson's comparing himself to Deshaun Watson, thinking, okay, I deserve, if not the same money as Watson, close to what Deshaun Watson is getting, and I want it guaranteed. And in the case of Lamar Jackson, it's more of a risk. See, Deshaun Watson's risk isn't on the field. He's going to produce for you on the field. Worst case scenario, Deshaun Watson's going to be a good quarterback on the field. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, he's going to be great. Lamar Jackson, you're not that sure whether he's even going to remain healthy.
Yeah. But Jack, the only thing I'm saying here is that the pricing, whether it's guaranteed or not, is going up. That's why, no longer was, Amari Cooper with the Dallas Cowboys. That's why Bradbury is not with the Giants anymore, because even though a lot of it's not guaranteed, the back end of some contracts are still pretty heavy. And this is to fit under the cap, as you're saying, to pick up these free agents or to sign the rookies. You need this amount of space under the salary cap. So it doesn't affect them. So So this is what's going to go on in Dallas right now. They're already predicting that that Diggs is going to want around $25 million because he's going to be.
Well, look at Stephon Diggs,
Yeah.
the brother, the wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. He just signed an enormous contract, a 5-year deal, most of it guaranteed. And is it going to come back to bite Buffalo?
We'll see.
It might. Listen, if they win a Super Bowl and he contributes, it's certainly worth it.
Well, we'll definitely see what's going to happen there. Another thing, the mini camps, the rookie mini camps, are going to be closing here. I think this weekend the vets start coming in, and I was talking a little bit with Jim and Byron about the mini camps. Some players look really good in mini camps. Jim Jeffcoat, his tight end in Dallas, was a standout, and the wide receiver that the Giants picked up in the 3rd round is a standout right now. He looks great. But of course, they bring it right to my attention that this is just drills. And this is just
everyone looks good hitting the bag.
And
they have in boxing. A fighter hits the heavy bag. Oh, he looks great.
Right.
Like a real champ.
Right.
And he gets the ring and falls apart.
Right. And of course the vets aren't there yet. When the pressure comes in, and they know you're there for their jobs, and the real competition starts. So when I was talking, or when Jim was talking last night, he brought up an unbelievable story, right? So he's out in the parking lot with some of the other players, and they're giving him a hard time, and they're almost wanting to jump him. And Jim takes a step back and breaks one of the other defensive linemen's nose with a punch.
Whoa. Tell me the story. Wait. Start over, man.
So Jim Jeffcoat.
When did this happen?
In his rookie year. He was in rookie.
He's a rookie. So Jim,
right.
Yeah.
So he's competing, of course, for a starting job. And, he's a number 1 draft choice and all that. And in the parking lot after practice, there was a couple guys giving him a hard time of some of the defensive linemen. And it got carried away where Jim had to actually throw a punch, and he broke the other guy's nose. So Tom Landry, of course, the next day, told him, we don't do that to our own players, Jeffcoat. And the defensive line coach, when Landry kind of walked away, put his arm around him and kind of said in his ear, "You break another defensive lineman's coach, I'll hit you with a 2x4, and kind of joking with him. So he knew right then that, he was in for an unbelievable competition, that these guys that are coming out, trying out for these teams, are going to do anything to try to intimidate you, are going to try to do anything to make you look bad, and even get in fights and try to challenge you. And we don't know about this stuff, right? When we talk about, the recruits coming in, I shouldn't say recruits, but the draftees coming in, even if you're a high round draft choice.
Well, Mac, Ryan Tannehill came under a lot of criticism. Granted, the quarterback position is different. Guys aren't getting physical with one another, and they can't vent their frustration that way. But when the Titans drafted Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty, in the 3rd round this year, Ryan Tannehill said in an innocent way, totally innocent, "It's not my job to mentor him. If he could learn from me, that's going to be great." You want to know something? Ben Roethlisberger said the same exact thing a few years ago when the Steelers drafted Mason Rudolph in the 3rd round. He even said we could have used the position player, someone else to help. But he said, look, it's not my job to teach him what to do. If he asks me something, I'll, help him out. But it's not my job to help him and do this or that. And people left Big Ben alone. But Ryan Tannehill came under a lot of criticism from people. And it was an innocent remark by Ryan Tannehill. He should have came under no criticism.
Well,
all he said, it's not my job to mentor him, but if he could learn from me, great. He didn't say he wouldn't help him out.
Well, Jim Jeffcoat disagrees with you totally on that, Jack. He said if it wasn't for Randy White, he might not have ever stayed with the Cowboys because Randy White took him under his wing. That was his mentor. And Randy White, of course, he's not going anywhere.
There's more than one position on the line.
No, I agree with you. But I'm just saying he disagrees with him. That's part of being a professional is that when a younger player comes in, and there's more than one position, but there is only one quarterback position there, that he should be mentoring the young quarterback to eventually take over. If you're that good, then you don't have to worry about Willis taking your job. So he disagrees with you. Byron Williams said if it wasn't for when he got drafted by the Green Bay Packers, of course, they had, Jefferson and Lofton there, two great all-pros, and they kind of took him under their wing. And they, of course, they paid it forward. When they became the experienced stars, if you will, on the team, they took the younger ones and brought them under their wing. And it's just something that's been happening in the NFL for years.
But it doesn't mean Ryan Tannehill wouldn't do all he could to help him.
Right.
But it's not his job.
Right. Right.
I mean,
but
it's not his job as quarterback, but he'll gladly help him otherwise. If he sees he's making mistakes, but he's not going to say, oh, he's coming to camp. This is my project. I got to work with him.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just telling you what they said, Jack, that they feel as a professional on that team, it was almost their job to do that you're looking out for the team first, as you always should.
Because they're a unit. The quarterbacks are quite a unit.
I agree. There is a difference. There definitely is a difference. Definitely is. So interesting stuff. If you guys were watching J&B Talking Shop last night, you would have heard that. Interesting stuff from the inside of lot, and said a lot more stuff too that I'm not going to say on the air here, but there's a lot more stories coming from what I understand, which is why I enjoy working with them on J&B Talking Shop. So anyway, Jack, it's a little early. It's getting close to 1:56. You got anything you want to talk about before we cut out of here for today?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a lively debate show this Saturday. A lot of interesting, lively questions. The women's national team, they got equal pay with the men's team. Okay, finally, that's historic in a sense, because if you consider soccer a major sport, and worldwide it definitely is a major sport, but as far as World Cups and Olympics, it's a major sport even in the United States when you talk about World Cups and Olympics when they get to participate. And what this might mean, the purse parity, equal pay, how it might affect other sports like tennis, where women get less money, and golf, and it was historic, the ruling that came down yesterday, and I'll have a lot to say about it. It'll be one of our debate questions.
That sounds great. That sounds great. And you know something, I think, and if you base it off success, the women should be making more than the men right now, because
that's something we're going to address Saturday.
Yeah. So anyway, I agree with that. I agree with that totally, especially on a world level, where it's not women trying to break into something that's a lot more physical or playing on a men's team. We're just talking about what their contribution to the country was, to the soccer period worldwide, and as I said, success. To me, the women should be making more money than the men, but that's another discussion for another time. Great point on that. I forgot to bring that up. But anyways, folks, that's it for the show today. I hope you had a good time. I did. As I said, tomorrow I got some things I got to take care of, so I won't be in tomorrow. I'll be back Saturday. The Philly sports guy Jamie Pags will be filling in as your guest host with Jack. So please tune in, check him out. Pags does a great job. He has a great vibe with Jack when they're on together doing the same show. Not so much when I bring him in with.
Pags doesn't let me get a word in, so I mean, I can at least relax and have my cup of coffee during the show and chill out.
There you go. So, folks, have a great Thursday night. You'll see the Jack and Mac show, guest host Philly sports guy tomorrow, debate show on Saturday, and This Week in Sports with me, Jack, and Jeff Coat on Sunday. Again, have a great day today, and thanks for tuning in.